Alright, so I'm hearing around that some people believe the BYD Dolphin will be the best-selling EV. Well, there's something you need to know about these people. They don't have a crystal ball and can't see into the future. Alright, neither can Elon, despite him saying the Model Y will become the best-selling car in the world. Period. Elon has a lot more data, and you know what? That data is a lot more valuable to him or Tesla than anyone else in the world, and can thus afford to spend whatever is necessary in researching whether this statement is true, given that they are literally investing in the region of $5 billion in the hope that this is right. Elon is hoping Tesla would benefit in the region of perhaps $60 billion gross profit a year. Alright, that was the introduction, which is going to be one of the many scenarios we're going to play in order to discover what chance the BYD Dolphin has to become the best-selling EV in the world. Firstly, what is it that makes the Dolphin likely that it will be the best-selling EV? Well, the price. It's one of the cheapest EVs, starting at around only $17,000 in China without subsidies, with 130 miles of range EPA. This is affordable to the masses. But so what? Are people interested in just buying the cheapest EV? Why is there a waiting list until August for the Model Y at nearly $60,000 when the Tesla Model 3 starts at just $45,000? That's a 33% higher price. Not only that, when you reduce the price of something as elastic as a car, the demand increases significantly more than the percentage price drop. Yet we're seeing more demand for a car that is 1/3 more expensive. This is the mistake Henry Ford made with the Model T. His whole deal was making a car as cheap as possible, and he was right for a while. He did everything he could to cut costs. He even had his own steel mills. Oh, and Fordlandia, where he attempted to grow rubber in the Brazilian rainforest. I have to hand it to Ford. He was up there with Elon in the way of vertical integration, even took it further in some ways. Of course, making your own robot labor is another level again. But eventually, people wanted something a bit different from a Model T, and a bit more exciting rather than just cheap. And they started buying GMs, as they wanted something to show their individualism. Currently, Tesla is like the Model T. The automobile used to be incredibly expensive, that only the wealthy could afford them. Just like if you wanted to make an electric car early on, it was well over $100,000. Then Tesla used their vertical integration to get the price down. But in this example, is the Model T the Tesla, or is it the Dolphin? The point is, don't assume just because someone can make a cheaper version of something that it will sell better. The Corolla is the world's best-selling car currently, but it's not the cheapest. Legacy Autos have invested significant amounts of money and time in establishing and marketing various price points of vehicles that people are willing to spend. It is ingrained into the market. Next scenario, BYD have shown no evidence as of yet that they are capable of ramping up to volume production, and of course, let alone doing it at a profit. Why do you give BYD so much credibility when they're not capable of making a net profit with BEVs yet? Especially if their whole plan is to be a cheap alternative. So what? What does it matter if they don't make a profit? Anyone can be the cheapest and not make a profit. It's just about how long can you keep doing that and remain solvent. BYD do have their hybrid business to subsidize them through, which probably will last for a reasonable length when compared to legacy companies subsidizing their electric business with ICE cars, which won't be viable for as long. BYD have not managed to hit volume production to date with any of their models, but perhaps if they ever had a chance, then it probably is with the Dolphin, due to it being a lot smaller and more simple. But either way, this is yet to be seen or proven, so assuming that they can is a reasonably big assumption. And even if they do reach volume production of about 20,000 units a month, do you think it gets easier to increase that rate of production more? Or perhaps exponentially hard? Well, if they're able to achieve a net profit from it, then they possibly could just add more lines and rinse and repeat. Okay, so how long might this take? They have their own in-house battery production, LFP2, which is not going to be so constrained and can ramp up at a faster rate as a result, so they may not be as battery constrained as many others. But actually, BYD supposedly have 170 gigawatt hours of batteries in the pipeline for 2025. Now, if all those batteries went into the lowest Dolphin with the smallest battery, then that would be enough batteries for 5.5 million Dolphins a year. But BYD have other EVs, and some are even buses. Also, as they use LFP, a lot of their cars, like the Han, use 80 kilowatt hours of battery per vehicle, which is a big battery, and of course the longer range Dolphin uses 45 kilowatt hours of batteries. Factor all those variables in, and perhaps then they could earmark 70 gigawatt hours of batteries for the Dolphin, around 40% of their batteries for one model, with an average of say 37.5 kilowatt hours. Using that as the average battery size, then we're at 1.8 million Dolphins a year. I'm just running a scenario of if they designated this many batteries to that one model, as in this is the most I could see them allocating to the Dolphin. Bear in mind, BYD would make larger gross profits from the more expensive models, so I would find it unlikely they would even allocate 40% to the Dolphin. In the past, we've run models on the Model Y, which looks likely to produce in excess of 3 million vehicles by 2025, so the Dolphin isn't really going to be that close. But perhaps the demand for the Model Y stops at around that level, and BYD keep ramping up the Dolphin, and it may eventually overtake the Model Y. Except in 2025, it's about this time the compact Tesla will also be ramping up, and at a much faster speed than the BYD, as Tesla can make about 100 times as many batteries per square foot at about half the cost BYD can, and probably about 30% more energy density at the cell level. Add to that all the other efficiencies of a Tesla compared to BYD, like powertrain, motor, software, aerodynamics. Alright, you get the idea. And no, BYD are not going to be able to catch up. In other words, anything BYD can do, Tesla can do better. The Tesla Compact might start at $25,000 and will likely have around 250 miles of range. The long-range BYD Dolphin is already about $22,000 in China without subsidies. That's in its domestic market. They may set up factories in other continents too perhaps, but one of their advantages is Chinese manufacturing. It will be tough for them to do larger scale manufacturing outside of China. But either way, the BYD Dolphin long-range version is 175 miles EPA compared to Tesla's 250 miles, or perhaps even more range. If there is no protectionism or subsidies, and we're going like for like, then we have a self-driving Tesla with 75 miles more range and a lot more performance for just $3,000 more. About 95% of people who can afford $22,000 for a vehicle can find a way to afford $25,000 when it's that much better. The running cost of the Tesla will be lower too. It will be safer, robotaxi income potential, FSD, App Store, better brand, etc, etc, etc. The Tesla trumps the BYD every possible way. But what if Tesla can't make enough compact Teslas? Well, perhaps people will buy the Dolphins instead. Well, maybe, but Tesla will be able to make a lot more compacts than BYD can Dolphins. I'm projecting at least 5 million compact sales a year, eventually possibly even 10 million, maybe with some variations. BYD may get subsidies in China, but it's likely Tesla will get equal subsidies. Basically, I think the compact will destroy the Dolphin, and it may just have a short-lived time until Tesla ramps up their compact. But you know, EVs aren't really going to be competing against each other. There are so many ICE vehicles to compete with first, really. So BYD may be able to sell every car they make, which as we know, it could hit 2 million Dolphins a year in 5 years' time. But eventually, the market will saturate, and Tesla will have a much higher share when it does. And then Tesla will start to eat the other EV company shares too, as now there'd be enough Teslas for everyone, and they're priced more to the mass market, offering models for everyone, rather than just as a premium if Tesla so decide to make that many vehicles. What about depreciation? Will BYDs hold their prices like a Tesla, or will they depreciate like a Bolt or a Leaf, like the other budget EV brands? What makes BYD special enough to think it won't depreciate? This is a factor when buying a new car. The biggest cost of ownership is how much will it depreciate. Tesla have shown they hold their value very well. Even before the pandemic, Model 3s were holding their price exceptionally well. If we see BYDs depreciating faster, then this will put off consumers too, and another reason to spend that little bit more on a Tesla. Eventually, Teslas will come down in price perhaps, which might mean that consumers will buy a used Tesla instead of a BYD, as it's so much more vehicle. But if this doesn't happen, then perhaps people will buy the Tesla over the BYD because it doesn't depreciate. Get it? If it's heads, Tesla wins. If it's tails, BYD loses. It's really hard for anyone to beat Tesla. Okay, I've mentioned the Dolphin is $22,000. Obviously, it would cost a lot more than that outside of China, but it does start at $17,000 for the lower range. But how many consumers will want a car that only has 130 miles of range? Perhaps some of them, but it's a major sacrifice, particularly when Tesla offers significantly more range for only $8,000 more. $8,000 more over 5 years is only $130 a month. I don't think when the market saturates, it will be musical chairs. When the music stops, everyone gets to keep their chairs they claimed. I think Tesla will continue to keep taking everyone else's chairs even after the music has stopped, and likely because it's what consumers want. I mean, just compare the specs of the compact with the Dolphin. Yes, specs that I totally made up myself, but I think they'll be close. And for the people who really can't afford a compact Tesla, but really are done having to drive themselves around like some Neanderthal, well, there'll be robotaxis too. And people are too caught up with the whole EV movement right now that they're neglecting the AV movement, autonomous vehicles. The Tesla Compact will likely be able to drive itself. I'm not saying there isn't a market for really low-cost EVs. It might be a way for people to afford private transport rather than public because it became that much cheaper. And it's still a lot lower cost to run than, say, a $20,000 ICE car. But imagine owning this BYD driving in soul-crushing traffic, and you look around when everyone else is in their cars with their feet up, watching Tesla Economist on YouTube. I also suspect that BYD may make very little actual gross profit per sale of each Dolphin, which makes it tougher to make a profit with volume production. Yes, these are all possibilities. I would just hate to be a company like BYD or any other company making BEVs with Tesla hanging over me, or invested in any such company. Don't bet against Elon. This is why I say any BEV company needs to seriously niche. Lucid and Rivian may have niched, a high-end luxury market for Lucid and a lifestyle vehicle from Rivian. But how do you go mainstream with those to fit a price tag of around $100 billion to your company? They need a gross profit of about $10 billion to warrant that price tag. If they can sell 1 million cars a year, they need to make $10,000 gross profit per vehicle. That's not impossible, or even perhaps $20,000 per vehicle, but they likely have to offer more vehicles to the masses in order to achieve that, which means competing against Tesla more head-to-head. Besides, $100 billion would be their valuation once achieved that in, say, 10 years' time, not now before they haven't demonstrated any path on how to achieve that. Therefore, I cannot see a path for the BYD Dolphin becoming the biggest selling EV. I think it would be the Model Y and then the compact Tesla, except these will be the biggest selling cars, not just EVs. Thanks for listening. Please hit the thumbs up and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter and talk to me on Patreon.